Have you ever wondered why someone can make you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells without ever raising their voice or making a single obvious threat? The subtle power plays avoidants use to control you operate below the radar of traditional manipulation tactics, making them incredibly difficult to identify and even harder to resist. When someone with avoidant attachment wants to maintain control in a relationship, they don't use dramatic scenes or explosive confrontations. Instead, they employ a sophisticated system of emotional withdrawal, strategic silence, and calculated unavailability that keeps you constantly guessing about where you stand. These power plays are so subtle that you might not even realize you're being controlled until you find yourself changing your behavior, suppressing your needs, and walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their withdrawal. Understanding how these invisible control mechanisms work will help you recognize when your natural desire for connection is being weaponized against you. The insights you'll discover today will explain why you feel like you're always the one initiating difficult conversations, why you find yourself apologizing for having needs, and why your attempts to get closer seem to push them further away. This knowledge isn't just about understanding relationship dynamics. It's about recognizing when your emotional investment is being used as leverage to keep you compliant and off balance. The patterns revealed here will show you how avoidant individuals use their emotional limitations not as vulnerabilities to work through together, but as tools to maintain power and control without appearing obviously manipulative. Most importantly, you'll learn to distinguish between someone who genuinely struggles with intimacy and someone who uses that struggle to keep you dancing to their emotional rhythm. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Picture a sophisticated evening at a gallery opening in Manhattan where Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl stood next to someone she had been dating for 4 months, feeling completely invisible despite being right beside him. The evening had started beautifully. He had suggested they attend this art exhibition together, seeming genuinely excited about sharing something he was passionate about. But from the moment they arrived, something shifted. He became completely absorbed in conversations with other people, leaving Blair standing alone while he discussed art with strangers for what felt like hours. When she tried to join the conversations, he would give her a polite but distant smile and subtly redirect his attention back to the other person. What made this particularly confusing was that he wasn't being obviously rude or rejecting. He would occasionally touch her arm or introduce her to people, but these gestures felt mechanical, like he was going through the motions of being a good partner while his real energy and attention went elsewhere. When Blair tried to catch his eye or share a thought about a piece of art, he would nod briefly and then turn away, as if her input was mildly interesting but ultimately unimportant. She found herself becoming increasingly anxious, working harder and harder to capture his attention and approval. The power play became clear during the car ride home. Blair, feeling hurt and confused by his behavior, decided to address what had happened. She chose her words carefully, not wanting to sound accusatory. "I felt a bit left out tonight. It seemed like you were really engaged with everyone except me." His response was a masterclass in subtle control. He didn't get angry or defensive. Instead, he sighed quietly and said, "Blair, I thought you would be happy that I was being social. You're always saying I should open up more. I can't win with you." The brilliance of this response was how it completely flipped the situation. Suddenly, Blair found herself in the position of having to defend her feelings while he positioned himself as the victim of her unreasonable expectations. Her legitimate hurt about feeling ignored became evidence that she was difficult to please. Her desire to feel included became a demand that was stifling his social growth. Without raising his voice or making any obvious attacks, He had made her the problem and himself the long-suffering partner trying his best to make her happy. What followed was even more sophisticated. Instead of continuing the conversation or trying to understand her perspective, he became quiet and withdrawn. He answered her attempts to explain her feelings with short responses and long silences. The message was clear. Bringing up relationship issues resulted in punishment through emotional withdrawal. Blair found herself apologizing for being too sensitive and promising to be more understanding of his need to be social, even though her original concern, feeling ignored by her partner, had never been addressed. This pattern had been repeating for months, though Blair was only beginning to recognize it. Whenever she had a need, concern, or desire for more connection, his response followed the same script. Minimize her feelings, reframe the situation to make her the problem, then withdraw emotionally as punishment for bringing up the issue. The genius of this system was that it never involved obvious cruelty or abuse. He never called her names, never threatened to leave, never made dramatic scenes. Instead, he used her love for him and her desire for connection as tools to keep her focused on earning his approval rather than getting her needs met. The turning point came when Blair realized that she had stopped bringing up anything that might upset him. She had learned, through this careful conditioning, that expressing her needs resulted in being made to feel unreasonable, followed by days of cold distance that felt worse than the original problem. She had become so focused on avoiding his withdrawal that she had forgotten what it felt like to have a partner who actually wanted to hear her concerns and work through problems together. The most insidious aspect of his control was how he used her attachment needs against her. Blair naturally wanted to feel close and connected to her partner, but he had turned that desire into a weakness he could exploit. When she reached out for connection, he would give her just enough attention to keep her hoping, but never enough to feel secure. When she pulled back to protect herself, he would suddenly become more available, drawing her back in with promises of deeper intimacy that never quite materialized. The revelation came during what should have been a romantic dinner when Blair decided to test her growing suspicions about his behavior patterns. She deliberately brought up a minor concern about their communication, watching carefully for his response. Like clockwork, he followed his usual script. He minimized her feelings, suggested she was being too sensitive, then became quiet and distant for the rest of the evening. But this time, Blair saw it clearly for what it was, a calculated response designed to train her not to have needs or express concerns. The final piece of understanding came when Blair realized that his emotional unavailability wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a control strategy. By remaining emotionally distant, he forced her to do all the emotional labor in the relationship. She was the one who had to initiate difficult conversations, work through problems, and try to bridge the gap between them. This dynamic kept her constantly focused on him and his emotional state, while her own needs became secondary concerns that could be dismissed as excessive or unreasonable. Most shocking was the recognition that he enjoyed the power this dynamic gave him. When she would get upset about his emotional distance, she could see a subtle satisfaction in his response, as if her pain confirmed his control over the relationship. He had created a situation where her love for him became the very thing that kept her trapped in a cycle of pursuing someone who was always just out of reach, always requiring her to prove her worth through patience and understanding of his attachment issues. Recognizing and protecting yourself from the subtle power plays used by avoidant partners requires understanding that these aren't relationship problems to solve together. They're control strategies that benefit the person using them. First, pay attention to how conflicts and concerns are handled in your relationship. If you find that every time you bring up an issue, you end up apologizing for bringing it up while the original problem remains unaddressed, you're dealing with someone who uses your emotional investment to control the relationship dynamic. Healthy partners might struggle with conflict, but they don't systematically train you to stop having needs through emotional withdrawal and blame reversal. Second, notice if you've stopped bringing up things that matter to you because you've learned that expressing needs results in being made to feel unreasonable or needy. This is a clear sign that you're being controlled through the strategic use of emotional withdrawal. When someone consistently responds to your concerns by making you defend having the concerns in the first place, they're not working through relationship issues with you. They're training you to prioritize their comfort over your own well-being. Third, observe whether you're doing all the emotional labor in the relationship while they remain in the comfortable position of being pursued rather than pursuing. Avoidant partners who use control tactics will position themselves as the prize to be won rather than an equal partner working toward mutual connection. They'll make you feel like you need to earn their emotional availability through perfect patience and understanding, while they never have to work to earn your continued investment in the relationship. Fourth, pay attention to whether they seem to enjoy or get satisfaction from your distress when they withdraw. Genuine avoidant attachment involves pulling away due to fear and discomfort with intimacy. But when someone appears to derive subtle satisfaction from your pain or seems energized by the power of making you chase them, you're dealing with someone who is using avoidant behaviors strategically rather than struggling with them genuinely. Most importantly, trust your instincts about whether your emotional responses are being used against you. If you find yourself constantly explaining why you have feelings, defending your right to express concerns, or apologizing for wanting basic relationship needs met, you're being controlled through manipulation of your natural attachment system. Healthy relationships involve two people working together to meet each other's needs, not one person training the other to stop having needs through strategic emotional withdrawal. Remember that you don't have to accept being controlled just because the control tactics are subtle rather than obvious. Emotional manipulation that operates through withdrawal and blame reversal is still manipulation, even when it's delivered calmly and positioned as the other person's attachment struggles. Your needs for consistency, communication, and emotional availability are not excessive demands. They're basic requirements for healthy relationships. The subtle power plays used by avoidant partners represent one of the most sophisticated forms of relationship control because they exploit your natural desire for connection while never appearing obviously abusive or manipulative. Unlike partners who control through anger or threats, avoidant controllers use your love for them as the very mechanism of control. They turn your attachment needs into weaknesses they can exploit, making you feel grateful for scraps of attention while training you to stop asking for genuine intimacy. This dynamic is particularly devastating because it masquerades as someone working through attachment issues rather than someone deliberately maintaining power over you. Your patience with their emotional limitations becomes enablement of their control tactics. Your understanding of their struggles becomes acceptance of being treated poorly. Your efforts to bridge the emotional gap between you become a one-sided dance where you're always moving towards someone who stays just out of reach. The tragedy of these relationships is that they take your greatest strengths, your capacity for love, your willingness to be patient, your desire to understand and help someone you care about, and turn them into tools for keeping you trapped in a dynamic that serves them while slowly eroding your sense of self-worth and emotional well-being. You become so focused on earning their approval and avoiding their withdrawal that you forget what it feels like to be genuinely valued and pursued by someone who wants to be with you. Breaking free from these subtle control dynamics requires recognizing that this isn't about fixing communication problems or helping someone with attachment issues. It's about refusing to participate in a system designed to keep you constantly proving your worth to someone who has already decided you're not worth their full emotional investment. Your job isn't to love someone out of their control patterns. Your job is to recognize when your love is being weaponized against you and to protect yourself accordingly. You deserve relationships that enhance your sense of self rather than requiring you to constantly question whether your needs are reasonable. You deserve partners who work toward greater intimacy rather than using the promise of future closeness to keep you accepting present distance. You deserve to feel valued and prioritized rather than constantly auditioning for love from someone who keeps you at arm's length while enjoying the power that distance gives them. The path forward involves trusting your emotional responses, setting clear boundaries about how you will and won't be treated, and refusing to accept relationship dynamics that require you to shrink yourself to accommodate someone else's comfort with controlling you. Remember that healthy love doesn't require you to stop having needs or to earn basic respect and consideration through perfect patience and understanding. And here's the trap. You end up chasing the one who hurts you. The next video explains why you keep chasing the avoidant who hurts you.